Howdy folks, how have you all been doing lately? I hope you all are good, because today we're gonna talk about bad stuff. Pretty bad stuff. The Walking Dead: A New Frontier. A&F for intimacy. Here we are, finally, to talk about it. Which is ironic, because before I made those Season 2 videos you should definitely watch, I was planning on making a video trying to improve A&F. That's basically what I'll do now. In case you've watched my Season 2 videos, you might ask, will you pick the A&F story where Season 2 left on those videos? To that, I say yes and no. I'll have two takes on A&F. This here, where I'll pick pre-existing elements from the game we already know and try to improve it. And then in the future, I'll make another video trying to make a Season 3 basically from scratch, with nothing beyond the plot points I left from Season 2 videos. So, rephrasing it, this video here and the follow-up will still tell the story of Javier, the Garcia family, the New Frontier community, and will make use of most of the characters already in the story. They might act differently from how they do in the game, as they might come in different versions of themselves. I ask that you leave a like right now if you're already a subscriber, and if you're new here, feel welcome to check the video out, and if you enjoy it, then you'll decide whether to like or subscribe. So remember people, same thing I did for Season 2, alright? I'll mostly make use of cut content, other evidence in-game, and personal touches of mine. With that being said, let's get into it. I feel like A&F is the game Telltale had the most problems while producing it. Important people leaving the company and stepping down from important roles on halfway its production. There's no way anything good could come out from this. As you all may know, after finishing A&F on November 2017, Telltale fired around 90 employees without a further notice. And then on 2018, when the final season was out for its second episode, when finally they were improving on their dated formula of making games, the company declared bankruptcy. And in a funny way, this was partially A&F's fault. The game was constantly being rewritten and drastically changed as the episodes went on. Remember how I said in my previous video how Season 2 was also rewritten and changed? Yeah, now try multiplying it for by 3 or 4 for A&F, and you'll get what I'm saying. That was pretty terrible for the game and for the company at the same time. Not only that, but this game had two enormous challenges to begin with: making use of all the Season 2 endings, and to justify a new protagonist replacing Clementine. I don't know if you guys remember, but the game was first set to release on November 16th, 2016, and 2 weeks before that, Telltale was completely silent about The Walking Dead, talking only about Batman and other projects on their Twitter account and so. This was the first time I was gonna make part of the releasing cycle of The Walking Dead game. And I remember at the time to be a bit worried. This happened and it was on the release day and no one said anything about it. Until a few days after, when they decided to delay the release of the game to December. Only for you people to understand how poorly this game was being handled by the company. I mean, thank God Telltale has been restored and it is back on track, allegedly producing The Wolf Among Us 2, a very awaited title of them. However, relieving, we'll still need to see if they have improved and learned from their past ways or not. At the end of November of 2016, they announced the game would come on December 20th, with episodes 1 and 2, Ties That Bind, parts 1 and 2, released together. This detail in particular got me a bit more excited. it was something Telltale has never done in the past. And then we had the Game Awards trailer that basically shows the Javier flashback in the Outbreak, and I was hyped. But then, when the launch trailer came in a few weeks before the release, having images of Clem and AJ, man, I was out of my mind, just begging them to take my money already. How fool I was at the time. Beginning things, episode 1 would start exactly like it does with Javi's backstory. I think a few people don't quite appreciate the scene as much as it deserved. People, when play this game for the first time, were all skeptical about these new people because really everyone just wanted to see Clem again. But we're now watching these new people. Anyway, the scene is pretty good, and I would still keep it that way. Not only the prologue, but I'd practically keep everything that has been shown to us, from the start of the game until the point where Max and the gang show up by the ambulance. Right here would be ambushed by them, and the scene would basically play out like it does already until the point where Javi's all alone with this guy here, whose name is Lonnie, in case you didn't know. As cut animations suggest, Javi was supposed to accidentally shoot Lonnie's ear in this scene where they were fighting over the pistol instead of just knocking him out, like it happens already. So I'd still put it in here. With rage for his harmed friend, Max would knock us out and we'd wake up in Rufus' truck. From here on out, things would start playing out pretty differently. In case you don't know, originally in this scene here, Rufus would take us to a place called the Slaughterhouse, a set that was all over the place on the early concept arts, but we never had even a slice of it in the game. The Slaughterhouse would be essentially a New Frontier prison and a walker storage for raids like the one that happens at Prescott in episode 2. And here would be also the first time we'd meet Clementine, because she'd also be a New Frontier prisoner. So remember people, when this game was first announced, it was supposed to have Javi and Clem as playable protagonists. But in the game, we only play with her on little 5-minute flashbacks, and Javi is playable in both flashbacks of his own and at the present day. Games like Tales from the Borderlands and Game of Thrones, both made by Telltale, had more than one playable character, and this aspect of those games were actually good. So why did they change their minds? I guess management just corkscrewed things here as well, as you might guess, as a classic Telltale thing to do. The both characters would meet each other here, and also in the prison is where Clementine would have the first flashback, picking up from the Season 2 ending. Remember people, here I'll stick to the original Season 2 endings and try to improve on them. So, have you ever had the impression these flashbacks were poor ways to send Clem on her way to be alone with AJ, so the story of the game could start practically from zero? Yeah. Oh, have you also noticed how A and F's episode are so freaking short? Here you can beat every single episode easily in an hour of gameplay or so, when Season 2 episodes rode at around 1 hour and 30 or 40 minutes. Not even to mention that in Season 1 we had at least 2 hours for each episode. A simple way to compensate the short length of the episodes and the lack of moments we control Clem would be to add more things to Clem's backstory on each of the flashbacks, so we could feel she's more of a playable protagonist, not just some fan service side character like she's in the game. So starting from Wellington, I think that it would be safe to put a more interactive setting with AJ. Maybe we could play with him and draw things with him, also showing us more of the community. How is it inside the gates? Is it just a bunch of containers like we see? What's its origin? Who's in charge? And so many other stuff we'd like to know. I'd put more interactions to Edith also. In the Walking Dead wiki, we see one of the Clementine's role was to be a huntress and patroller. This would actually be an interesting setting to put her into. I thought of maybe Clem and Edith negotiating with a foreign group. This group would be the New Frontier, but we wouldn't know about this just yet. I also thought of maybe putting Clem to visit Kenny while in here. You know, if you pick the Kenny ending in Season 2, you'll see on the episode 4 flashback that Kenny, Clem, and AJ were on a camp nearby Wellington, waiting for a chance to get in so nothing stops Kenny from waiting alone at a camp himself while Clem and AJ are both safely inside the gates. If you choose to stay, that is.
Goofball, want another?
By choosing the Kenny ending in Season 2, we could see more of how was the routine there. Hunting, placing fires to protect from the cold, maybe a few action scenes with the walkers, kinda like we already have. We could see a bit more of Kenny teaching Clem how to drive, like pretty 101 thing, instead of her already driving in the street and stuff. We could also play with AJ here, like the shadow thing we do in the episode 4 flashback. And I think I could also put a possibility for Edith showing up for a visit. She could mention the other group who's been trading with Wellington, exactly like it happens in the Wellington flashback. I mean, I like to think she'd do this because I feel she was really touched in the Season 2 ending and wanted to atone a little the fact that the people at Wellington didn't admit them in. The Kenny flashback in episode 4 is actually one of the only things that I truly like about this game, and concepts of this scene should have been more present in the story. So yeah, Kenny wouldn't die just yet on episode 1, right in the start, especially in a bullcrap car accident. Here, we would have the scene where Clem and Jane dump the corpses downhill, where Carver makes his little cameo there, and this starts a little conversation about him and Kenny. I love the fact that this conversation is actually different if you choose or not to watch Kenny kill Carver in Season 2. This scene would happen no matter what choice you picked in the Jane endings, because this here happens a few days after that at most, so there wouldn't be that much difference. But after that, there would be certain differences, if you choose to let the family get in or not. So I'd put the father, whose name is Randy, to break in house during the night to steal food in case you did not let them in. The confrontation would result in Jane dying. It could be an accident, she could have tried to save us, but in the end, Jane would die and Randy would leave with lots of stolen food. Clementine would then be alone with AJ. If you let the family in, Randy, Patricia, and Jill would live harmoniously with Clem, Jane, and AJ for a few months until the point where we have the little conversation in front of house, where we get to put a middle name to AJ and all. I like to think the family could be a part of this conversation as well. Jane would then say she's not feeling okay and would try to rest a little, and then we'd get up to see that she committed suicide. People oftenly say that this death is pretty bad, but I have to disagree. Kenny's death is bad. Wellington being overrun is bad. This here is completely in character for her to do. She's all about the survival type, and just remember how she was totally crazy on Season 2 about Rebecca being pregnant, saying, "Oh hey, what are we going to do with the baby?" and all. The sole thought of her getting pregnant scared her to death. And a plus, it has continuity from Season 2 Episode 4, Amid the Ruins, because the baby is Luke's. Aside of her dying, we would also have a little moment burying her, as concept art and cut content suggested that was supposed to happen. But there, we'd have the help of the family, and would be a choice to carve on the grave the name Jamie right next to hers. You know Jane's sister, Jamie, in case you remember. If Randy kills Jane, we'd also bury her and have the option to carve Jamie's name, but Clem would do it alone. Have you ever had the internal urge to asphyxiate Arvo with his own guts? Yeah, me too. So being alone would make us have a more suffering atmosphere, a sort of vibe we have in season 2 just after Clem is bitten by Sam the dog. Here we'd be tired, hungry, and with AJ on our backs. We would then try to hunt bunnies, like it is shown to us, but the sequence would be longer, with actual gameplay section to it. We would hunt, and then we would escape from a few walkers, even fighting a few of them. We would place a fire to cook with AJ, showing at last to the player how hard it would be to live with a baby out on her own. On the next day, we would calmly wake up, walk for a whole day until we find a little settlement at night. Clem would investigate the place and find people there sleeping. Mike and Arvo. Here we'd have two scenarios depending if Bonnie survived the thin ice on season 2 or not. If Bonnie died, the scene would play out like this. We would approach them to verify who they were and then see that it was Mike and Arvo sleeping. We'd then have the option of stealing them. Right after you made your choice, AJ would cry a bit and they would wake up. They would be startled to see you and the moment would be tense. Gunpoint and all of that, pretty similar to the scene where Arvo shoots Clem in season 2. The player would then think things like, oh hey, I've been here before, or oh I can't trust them, and so on. But Mike would actually try to amend things between them, claiming he regrets so much what happened to her. Even Arvo would be kinda sorry. In here, Mike would be the one holding the gun, since I find it really hard for Mike to trust Arvo with the gun after what happened in season 2. Mike would drop his gun to make his point, and that he wasn't gonna hurt her. And right here, I'd put a pretty interesting choice in my opinion. To shoot Arvo and run away, or putting the weapon down so we could have a conversation with them. Here, we could tell them exactly what happened after they betrayed us in season 2. The whole thing with Kenny and Jane, who she killed and who she left, and how hard it has been living with AJ alone. Mike would really put emphasis on how sorry he was for everything that happened. And Arvo would also be, even though he'd be making those Arvo faces to you and all. Conversation would come and go until they started remembering the shootout in the snow. And it hits a crescendo where Arvo gets so irritated when accessing those painful memories of his dead sister that he pushes a pistol to kill us, and we have to shoot him before he does. Arvo dies, and the flashback ends with Mike perplexed looking at the scene. If Bonnie survived, she'd come to us from behind when we tried to steal from them or not. Bonnie would disarm Clem, and we wouldn't make the choice of killing Arvo or sitting with them. We'd be forced to sit. We'd have the same conversation, but Bonnie would make a few points to make her presence in the scene, including apologizing to Clem about not only that she betrayed her, but for how she acted to Clem about Luke dying in the ice or not. Remember, Bonnie held his death against Clem if we choose only to cover Luke instead of trying to pull him. When Arvo gets mad and goes for his gun, Bonnie grabs the gun, and he'd accidentally kill her. Then we'd finish him off, leaving again only Clem and Mike alive. And AJ of course, but still. Those were all the flashbacks that could display only on episode 1, having 2 variants for each of the endings you picked, seeing choices mattering more than they do in the final game. The player would see more of Wellington and Edith, we'd see more of Kenny and the camping life with him, we'd see the consequences of letting the family get in or not, with Jane, both dying by the hands of Randy or committing suicide, and we'd have Arvo and Bonnie determinedly dying, and we'd be accompanied by Mike. I don't know about you guys, but having one of these flashbacks playing out for the player would actually be more satisfying than, oh hey, car accident, oh hey, bandit attack, or oh hey, walker attack, in case for the alone ending. All of that in only 5 minutes? I mean, these flashbacks I'm proposing would have at least 20 minutes each, and we'd have a few choices to make. Determinate dialogues and gameplay interactiveness, killing walkers, hunting, negotiating, and so on. Having longer and broader sections with those characters and settings, only in this first episode, would significantly improve A New Frontier for me. Anyway, that would be for the flashbacks. Now we'd head back to the present. Loads, actual loads of discovered cut animations indicated that there was supposed to be a very brutal sequence where Javi and Clem teamed up to escape from the slaughterhouse, including one part where Javi would split a guy's head in half with the chainsaw. Man, I would have loved to see that in the game. Even Max was supposed to die in here as well, and we'd have the choice of mercy killing him or letting him being eaten by the walkers, just like in The Walking Dead Michonne, where we do it to Norma. Well, here I wouldn't put Max, but I'd put Rufus instead. This would kinda contrast with the choice in the game where we shoot him or let him run away after the truck crashes by the road. This concept art in particular indicates Clem and Javi escaping the slaughterhouse with a bunch of fellow survivors in the back. Quick speculation, but I think these here were supposed to be Trip, Conrad, and Jesus. I'd still keep them here. Aside from Jesus, I have future plans for him. They would be here, but I wouldn't put the Prescott people as prisoners. I'd put them attacking the slaughterhouse, because their community was already at war with the New Frontier. With the facility being attacked, Javi and Clem would see the opportunity and would escape. However, escaping with us, there could be more people imprisoned, and I'd make it here these people mentioned Richmond, saying that they were from there and they were heading back. I don't know about you people, but I find Clem's idea to go to Richmond on episode 2 so sudden. It came out of nowhere basically. Right here, we'd have someone mentioning it to us before she comes up with the idea. This way, we would escape with the help of these people and the Prescott characters, Trip and Conrad. Not only that, but this prison escape, I find it a better way to bond Clem and Javi than the one we see in the game, which sometimes fail to convince players, including myself. The Prescott people would take us in, and we'd try to go to the junkyard, but the herd and the zombies stored in the slaughterhouse would make it impossible for them to go there that night, so they decide to go back to Prescott, and we'd go there with them. Arriving at Prescott, we'd get to know better how that community worked, who was in charge, and all of those things. Only a personal take, but I'd put Francine as the leader of Prescott. She's a character that has no development whatsoever in the game, and I'd like to see more of her. We'd then be treated by Eleanor because of an injury we got while escaping the slaughterhouse. And here we'd make the choice of whether leaving with Eleanor at night or with Trip by the morning. And here, this choice would actually have stakes. We'd make up our minds, and then we'd head to the junkyard, both with Trip or Eleanor on the other day, and here there would be more little differences. First of all, if you went with Eleanor, we'd head there during the night, and would appear there somewhere during sunrise, and with Trip, it would be somewhere during the middle of the morning. Now, remember in season 1 that we have to choose between Doug and Carly, and then live up to episodes 2 and 3? Yeah, right here I'd put Mariana and Gabe to be determinant. Yes, depending on your choices, Mariana would be the one to survive instead of Gabe. This is justice for Mariana, everyone, because she's the only likable character in the Garcia family, and she unfairly dies right in the start of the journey. So, by going at night with Eleanor, we'd make it to the junkyard at sunrise, and we'd meet Kate and Gabe inside the van with a bunch of walkers around it, exactly like the episode 2 cover image in the menu suggests. There would be so many walkers that the van would crash. Here, we would kill all of the walkers in a very frenetic scene. Clem and Eleanor would be really active in this combat scene. And then, after the walkers were beaten, we'd meet them, slightly tell where we've been the whole time, talk about Prescott and all that. Then we would start to look for Mariana. She'd then come out of the van like she does, exactly like Hobby told her to do. The New Frontier would attack, and Gabe would die. Not in the same way as Mariana though. He could die fighting the New Frontier. On the other hand, if we went with Trip, we'd have the exact scene we already have in the game, with Mariana coming out of the truck, with the van already destroyed, and with them rescuing Kate and Gabe inside the big truck deeper in the junkyard, and then Mariana getting shot in the forehead. From this point on, both scenes with Trip and Eleanor would basically be the same, with maybe little dialogue differences. We'd fight the New Frontier in a very frenetic combat sequence until the point we scare them off. Maybe there could be more gameplay interactiveness to create a combat strategy so the enemies could retreat, but I don't know. In the end of things, Badger and the other New Frontier guys would retreat, and the episode would end with Javi kneeling next to his dead nephew or niece. Kate would be devastated, and Clementine and Trip, or even Eleanor, would be there giving them support. This is it for the video for today, guys. A very long one, I know, but I think this episode here needed a lot of work from its original version, and I will continue this rewrite of Season 3 in the next video. I know I'm not always right about my statements, as the sole purpose of the video is to try at least to tell a better story than the one we already got. So feel free to leave in the comments what you think. Bottom lining everything, here I proposed more flashback scenarios and interactiveness with them, making your Season 2 choices more worthwhile, and added a whole ton of action. We would escape from the Slaughterhouse with the help of Prescott people, and we'd have a more action-packed shootout in the junkyard. I also tried to make a scenario where Clem and Javi could bond more by escaping the Slaughterhouse together, and I put a plus reference to Richmond, giving more to what the player could hope for the future. By adding longer flashbacks in the escape scene, the episode would be longer. I'm not that precise about it, but I think that an hour and 50 or even 2 hours would be the length of this episode. Yet, I appreciate you making it to the end. Thank you guys a lot. Remember to give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more, and check out my other videos I made about The Walking Dead. Peace to all of you, and bye.
Don't be stink-eyeing me. You're just lucky I didn't hang you.